What we're doing is going to chart the future of the world for the next 100 years.
This is the turret. All hands stand clear of left, center, and right gun and train while lighting off.
There's no apprehension. Everybody's ready to go.
When the storm began, it was for some an odd mixture of exhilaration and anxiety. Exhilaration that the waiting had ended, that they were doing what they were trained to do. Anxiety about their safety and the safety of their colleagues.
Saddam was warned over and over again to comply with the will of the United Nations. Leave Kuwait or be driven out.
Well, it is our understanding that the battleships, the Wisconsin and the Missouri, which are in the Persian Gulf, fired a number of Tomahawk cruise missiles.
Could never have expected.
This victory belongs to the finest fighting force this nation has ever known in its history.
Late morning, departure still a few hours away. Sailors cross the gangplank with bags in hand.
More than 1,500 more sailors and Marines are Middle East bound aboard the USS Missouri.
Armed with 9 powerful 16-inch 50 caliber guns, the mighty Mo has seen its share of action over the years.
Despite the ship's years of service, the Navy says the Missouri remains one of the fastest and most dangerous of its combat ships.
Its 16-inch guns can send a shell the weight of a small car 23 miles.
It was on the deck of this ship on September 2nd, 1945, that Japan formally surrendered to the Allied forces, ending World War II. But it was not the ship's past that dominated the thoughts of loved ones, rather what the Missouri will encounter in the future.
Saying goodbye was never so hard.
Where's my husband kissing, sweetheart? My husband kissing for Daddy?
I miss him too much already, and he hadn't even gone anywhere.
It's just something we have to do. It's just a mission that we have to complete.
What is your daddy going to do?
Fight the bad guys.
Fight the bad guys? The Missouri's mission in Operation Desert Shield could be a long one.
Normal deployment is 6 months, but then these are not normal times.
Just want to get there, get it over with, and get it done and get back.
By 2 o'clock, the Missouri is ready to go.
And then it was anchors away for the 45-year-old ship.
The venerated old battleship is pulling out of Long Beach Harbor right now.
The ship slowly pulled away from the pier as hundreds waved goodbye, not knowing when they'll see their loved ones again. A grand and emotional farewell as the 1,500 sailors and the Missouri took to sea.
The men of the Missouri must now embark on the duty ahead to join the American buildup in the Persian Gulf.
Well, it's expected to take 6 weeks for the mighty Mo to complete its journey to the Gulf.
Thanksgiving night, approximately about 17:45, we fire party got a call for flooding in the reefer machinery room spaces. Myself and my fire party, we arrived on scene to find approximately 3.5 to 4 feet of water in the reefer decks themselves. And we did notice the water was up above the electrical motors for the 3 reefer plants that service our 10 ice boxes that we have. Hopefully we can get this taken care of and get onward with our Westpac.
Flight Control, Chief Urban. I don't know. They're down here running around hollering, sir.
The USS Missouri arrived in Subic Bay Saturday afternoon. The 46-year-old Iowa-class battleship brought with her a storied history. Members of the Senate Appropriations Committee came to the Philippines to see how base negotiations have gone. During their visit, the senators had a chance to tour the 46-year-old battleship USS Missouri. With the current tension in the Gulf region, no one knows what will happen next, so most people are worried.
We want you to know that there's a substantial portion of the Congress that's totally committed to support the activities of our armed forces there and to do everything we can to see to it that this current problem with Iraq is brought to a speedy conclusion.
Now is when you put your cast mask on. You do not put your cast mask on at level 4. You wait until you hear the chemical alarm. The locker leader entered decon station one at a time.
We're real critical in that there's only 2 lockers that can handle the chemical, biological, radiological defense. So if we do get hit with something out there, then we're going to have to be the ones who are going to go out and decontaminate the area outside, and then bring the guys back in through the decontamination. How do you think the exercise went today?
I think it went pretty well. There were some glitches, but that's what this training is for, to figure out the glitches and have it ready for when we're ready to go.
You're doing freelance.
Just got to take this moment to say hi. I love you very much and miss you.
I miss you so much, sweetheart, and I want to be there. I sleep with my beer at night, you know, and it keeps me close to you, it really does.
Don't forget my care package, please.
You know, we're really looking forward to coming back home. Tell the folks, tell the family, tell our little dog, you know, I wish them all Merry Christmas, and I wish I was there. And
Better not pout, I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. He's making a list and checking it twice. Gonna find out who's naughty or nice. Santa Claus is coming
the ship scheduled to anchor at Bahrain in the future, and with helo support available in our operating area, that precious commodity, mail, will find its way to the ship. Reporting for KBMO News, I'm Petty Officer Lee Campbell.
Approximately 13:15 today, the merchant vessel Tabuk registered a distress signal to Missouri that it was on fire. The fire reportedly was in its main space engineering room. The CO, Captain Case, decided to send over a P-250 and part of the at-sea rescue and assistance team to provide assistance to the Tabuk.
Seconds after spotting an object in the water, Seaman White, who was a forward lookout on his station at that particular time, reported to the bridge by sound-powered phone that he had an object in the water that could possibly be a mine.
Actually touching the mine for the first time and knowing that you could be dead 1 minute, I mean just in milliseconds, and you could be gone. After you put the charge on the mine, you've actually pulled the fuse igniter, know the shot is starting to cook off, and you know in 15 or 20 minutes that the mine's going to be detonated. It's a tremendous feeling. We're just like a bunch of school kids again.
It's like the big game, like Master Chief said. It's like an athletic event. The adrenaline automatically pumps in. You know that that mine is designed for death and destruction. And while you're out there, you're going to be a big part of that if you mess up. And that's in the back of your mind. So every step you take extremely slow, and it's a thought-out process. And in a way, I guess you can say you've cheated death. If not cheated death, you possibly kept a ship from being dead in the water or taken out of action. To this day, I'm looking for more.
The liberation of Kuwait has begun.
Throughout the entire sky, there are flashes of light. Something is definitely underway here.
God.
At approximately 0100, Battleship Missouri entered war for the third time in its 50-year career. Missouri was at the forefront of the beginning phase of Operation Desert Storm as the ship launched 6 Tomahawk cruise missiles in the early morning hours and 6 more later in the morning.
The reality of life is very simply this. As of right now, we are officially at war with Iraq.
9:48 on the 17th of January.
Think about it. You are officially at war with the country of Iraq.
We're grateful for the job that we do. We're grateful for the part which we play in this theater. We are grateful that you have spared us in our ship.
Allied air forces began an attack on military targets in Iraq and Kuwait. These attacks continue as I speak. Ground forces are not engaged. This conflict started August 2nd when the dictator of Iraq invaded a small and helpless neighbor. Kuwait, a member of the Arab League and a member of the United Nations, was crushed. Its people brutalized. 5 months ago, Saddam Hussein started this cruel war against Kuwait. Tonight, the battle has been joined.
Desert Storm is now in its second day of operations. According to news reports, Allied bombing and missile launchings were similar in quantity to the first day of the war.
Missouri continued to support Operation Desert Storm today with a Tomahawk land attack missile launch window this morning and one scheduled for this afternoon. The first mission was to include the firing of 4 Tomahawks. However, after 3 perfect launches, a misfire occurred in the 4th missile.
Unexpected general quarters was sounded before lunch when USS Lethbridge reported incoming enemy aircraft. In the afternoon, the ship fired 4 more Tomahawk cruise missiles and fired 4 more in the evening.
The courage and the professionalism that's been exhibited by all of the people that have been involved in this campaign in the last 36 hours is nothing short of inspirational.
Day 3 of Operation Desert Storm was relatively quiet for Missouri. The ship fired no Tomahawk missiles during the day, but will fire 2 missiles tonight.
Although the war seemed far removed from the men of Missouri, that didn't mean the crew or the ship was letting down its guard. With the temporary quiet, many crew members found themselves out on deck performing the many daily and routine tasks that may have been neglected in the previous 2 days. Good evening, I'm JO2 Scott Thornblum, KBMO News. Today is day 4 of our war in the Gulf, and though it may not seem like it, the war is still definitely going on in both Iraq and Kuwait. Aboard Missouri, the war seemed a long way off as the ship conducted a half-day of holiday routine. After lunch, however, the crew was reminded of how close we really are as another Tomahawk missile was launched from the ABL decks. The launch brought a total of 28 Tomahawks that have been launched from Mighty Mo.
The odds are exceptionally good that you will hear the roar of the big guns this evening. Contrary to popular opinion, this is not a drive-by shooting. We believe we're going to stay there for a few days.
6,560 yards.
3769 November.
37570.
Oh,
left gun. They're wanting to fire. Whiskey, this is 9 November. Roger, understand. Permission to fire.
One to kick some ass. Everybody stand by.
This video, shot before dawn out in the Persian Gulf, shows some of the huge 16-inch guns aboard the USS Missouri, firing at Iraqi positions in Kuwait.
According to the U.S. military, the heavy shells on the historic battleship were used against targets inside Kuwait. Specifically, the 60-inch guns were trained on prefabricated bunkers the Iraqis apparently brought in to withstand an Allied ground offensive.
Aircraft in the area.
Launch. Good launch. Heavy 2. Bottle away.
Starboard engine ahead 2/3.
And the bottom line is really this. You came to war, you did it with class, and we're hanging in there and giving them hell.
70. 71. Hit the net at 70.
Aggression is defeated. The war is over.
Hark! Hark! Go see back! Hark! Hark! Go see back!
So it's time to start thinking about what the shellbacks are going to do with the logs.
I lose authority to dare trespass within His Majesty's royal domain.
Oh, you beautiful war.
look.
Yum, yum. Yum, yum.
Yum, yum.
Wake up.
Gentlemen of Missouri, this is Admiral Barney Kelly. I'm the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet, and just recently landed on your fantail, CH-53. My purpose to come out here today is to kind of welcome you home to America. As you notice ahead of you here, this is a typical Hawaiian day. You're going to get a typical Hawaiian reception when you come in.
We always talk about something that binds the ship together, and it's the history of the ship, the true history of the ship that bring all the people here.
All the Navy had to do was let out the word. The public could visit the USS Missouri today, and the people lined up. So, you know, we wanted to come out and see it.
It's the type of homecoming reserved for heroes, for men in ships who survived the battles and won the war. When the USS Missouri left Long Beach 6 months ago, she was the seasoned veteran. Now, so is her crew.
Every member of the crew just really worked hard and did their job.
The USS Missouri made a majestic return to her home harbor of Long Beach,
bringing its crew home to a spectacular welcome by several boats, pumping streams of water into the air. A colorful escort of small boats also greeted the mighty USS Missouri.
The 1,500 sailors aboard the Missouri lined the decks, anxiously waiting to be reunited with family and friends.
On the pier, their families waited, unable to hide their joy and relief.
Families from across the country were waiting at the Long Beach harbor.
This was a welcome sight for these men. Hundreds of people had waited excitedly for up to 3 hours for the ship to come in.
This homecoming was by invitation only, but you would have never guessed it by the size of the crowd.
Loved ones gripped binoculars for a sneak peek of the arriving battleship.
The 1,500 men survived an Iraqi missile attack. They're glad to be alive, glad to be home.
And they got one rousing welcome.
There were bands, some cheerleaders from the LA Raiders football team.
Anxious wives would have preferred a wild rampage to the deck of the USS Missouri, but they practiced patience. There was no doubt the toughest part of a 6-month wait is the last 20 minutes.
I love you, Richard!
They did good for our country. On deck, Carlos Brand searched for his family and found them.
You see him? Here!
And soon, Carlos was holding his wife and Carlos Jr.
Words couldn't describe the obvious joy of a sailor meeting his new son for the very first time.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Oh, boy.
I miss you so much. You see your daddy home, man?
All around them, families were reunited.
Never gonna get apart again.
What was it like for the men of the Missouri backing up ground forces in the Persian Gulf War?
It was very life-threatening. I'm very glad to be home.
And we launched 28 Tomahawk missiles while we were there. And then we were called into service the early part of February to the end of the war for shore bombardment support, and we fired just about 800 16-inch projectiles.
A homecoming filled with laughter, tears, and hugs, all for the heroes of the USS Missouri, veterans of the Gulf War.
Every member of the crew who feels a sense of history, and the exciting part of it is I think we got to participate in adding to the history of Missouri, and we'll all be sad to see her go.
The battle has been joined. No nation will be permitted to brutally assault its neighbor.
There's guns and there's more explosions on the western edge of the city. Wow, what a sight.
Operation Desert Storm began with a wave of more than 100 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from U.S. Navy surface ships against targets deep inside Iraq. Coalition aircraft operating ashore and from 6 Navy aircraft carriers began around-the-clock bombing. During the first day of the war, 15 different types of aircraft from 5 nations flew more than 1,000 sorties, with Navy pilots striking their targets deep inside Iraq. Forward-deployed American naval forces led the Allied effort to put a stranglehold on Iraqi commerce during the months that followed the brutal invasion of Kuwait. Now it was time to sweep the Iraqi Navy from the Persian Gulf, to take the war to the enemy by air, by land, by sea. Maritime power and the Navy Marine Corps team displayed great flexibility in support of U.S. Central Command joint operations. Two battleships and a 31-ship amphibious task force were among 120 U.S. Navy ships in the region, first on the scene with sustained combat power, poised to execute the President's orders. 75,000 sailors labored 24 hours a day to take total control of the Red Sea, Arabian Sea, and Persian Gulf. It was the nation's largest deployment of naval power since World War II.
Go, go, go!
Ashore, the 74,000 Marines of the 1st Marine Expeditionary Force moved to forward positions. Nearly 18,000 additional Marines were embarked aboard 33 amphibious ships, part of air-ground amphibious task forces that pinned down 10 Iraqi divisions waiting for a seaborne invasion. While the technical wizardry of Patriot batteries proved an effective defense against Scud attacks, their proficiency was mirrored at sea. New generations of naval weapons proved their precise capability, including the first combat launches of Tomahawk cruise missiles from submerged submarines, the USS Louisville and USS Pittsburgh. The Standoff Land Attack Missile, or SLAM, fired from carrier-based A-6 Intruder and A-7 Corsair II aircraft, hit home with telling effect. These same planes, launched from the flight decks of the carriers Midway, Theodore Roosevelt, Ranger, America, Saratoga, and John F. Kennedy, also delivered their laser-guided bombs and other munitions on target.
It's gone. The lights are out.
Operation Desert Storm also provided the first combat test of remotely piloted vehicles, or RPVs. These pilotless aircraft circled the enemy around the clock, transmitting live video and targeting information to Marine artillery units and battleships. As a result, gunnery officers could watch on television as their one-ton shells hit enemy targets more than 20 miles away. The versatility of the FA-18 Hornet was graphically demonstrated during one strike mission over Iraq. A group of 5 Hornets from Fighter Squadron 81 embarked on USS Saratoga were loaded with 2,000-pound Mark 84 bombs destined for an Iraqi airfield. When the lead Hornet detected 2 MiG-21s 7 miles away, it switched from its bombing profile to engage and shoot down both enemy aircraft with Sidewinder and Sparrow missiles. On any given day, Navy and Marine Corps air crews flew more than 1/3 of all U.S. airstrikes, many in darkness to exploit enemy weaknesses.
I hit my target. Yeah, it was real good.
Meanwhile, U.S. naval surface forces took total sea control, sinking more than 25 Iraqi ships and disabling scores of others. On the 3rd day of the war, the guided missile frigate Nicholas teamed up with a Kuwaiti frigate and U.S. Army helicopters to engage Iraqi forces operating from offshore Kuwaiti oil platforms. Joint Navy and Marine Corps operations launched from USS Kurtz liberated the first patch of Kuwaiti territory early in the war. Kurtz successfully navigated mine-infested waters to attack Iraqi soldiers on the island of Kura. Working with Navy A-6 Intruders, the island was captured in 6 hours. In the process, one Iraqi minesweeper was sunk and another was destroyed by its own mine while attempting to flee. The Kurtz rescued 22 survivors from the water. Early success in the war at sea was a direct reflection of our well-established maritime superiority. The readiness and professionalism of the U.S. Armed Forces and the special capabilities of the Navy and Marine Corps team.
One thing that is always inherent with a battle group is that we're self-contained for a sizable period of time. We've got our ordnance, we've got our food, we've got our fuel, and I think the deterrent value that represents will always be important.
Since the inception of the U.S. Middle East Force in 1949, the Navy and Marine Corps team has sustained a positive military-to-military relationship in the Persian Gulf. And Secretary of Defense Dick Cheney sounded the need for a continued naval presence in the region.
But I would clearly envision that we'll have a more robust naval presence out there than we've had in the past. We've been in the Gulf with naval forces since 1949, so that's not a new presence, but it may be a significantly larger presence than it was before.
For the first time since the Korean War, battleships Missouri and Wisconsin swung into action, sending their 1-ton, 16-inch projectiles nearly 20 miles inland against Iraqi fortifications. In one 60-hour period, USS Missouri fired more than 1 million pounds of ordnance in support of U.S. Marine Corps and coalition ground forces.
The battleship's bread and butter is the 16-inch guns and naval gunfire support. We're up here doing what we've been trained to do and what we do best, and that's support the ground forces ashore.
While stories of battleships and smart bombs topped the network news, Navy SEALs were secretly conducting operations in and around occupied Kuwait. The highly trained SEALs were involved in all phases of operations, including the dismantling of underwater mines, strategic reconnaissance, the boarding and search of merchant vessels, and combat search and rescue.
Merchant vessel, this is U.S. Navy warship, Channel 16.
Throughout the war, the Navy's Maritime Intercept Force continued to enforce the United Nations trade embargo. By the end of March, more than 8,500 merchant ships had been challenged, with over 1,000 boarded by Navy Coast Guard teams. 47 merchant vessels were diverted. The maritime interdiction cut off 95% of Iraq's imports, 100% of its exports, and cut its gross national product in half. The first major ground confrontation took place just 2 weeks after the outbreak of war. Iraqi forces crossed the Kuwaiti border and took control of Khafji, an abandoned coastal city. U.S. Marines and coalition forces regained control of the town after 12 hours of fierce fighting.
We observed a bunch of enemy armored personnel carriers kind of like clustered together at an intersection. We called in a fire mission with supporting artillery. We were calling them in very close to our position. We knew that, but we also knew we had to take out those APCs.
During the attack, 11 Marines were killed in action, the first ground combat casualties of the war. Iraqi mines posed a constant hidden danger, demanding the highest vigilance by lookouts and watchstanders. By early March, more than 150 mines had been located and destroyed. The Explosive Ordnance Disposal Detachment aboard USS Missouri destroyed 5 mines.
You know that mine is designed for death and destruction, and while you're out there, you're going to be a big part of that if you mess up. And in a way, I guess you can say you've cheated death. If not cheated death, you possibly kept a ship from being dead in the water or taken out of action.
During Allied minesweeping operations, 2 U.S. Navy ships were damaged when they struck Iraqi mines. The Tripoli had a 16-foot hole blasted in her hull, but continued her minesweeping duties for 4 days before steaming into port for repairs.
Everybody knew what to do. There was no panic. Everybody knew exactly where to go. Training, training, training. We complain about it, we complain about it. You come right down the bottom line and you need it. It's your best friend.
The USS Princeton suffered structural damage and had to be towed to port. In all, 7 were injured, 1 seriously. Strategic Sealift forces, including fast sealift, pre-positioned, and ready reserve force ships, were ready as planned and kingpins to the support of Desert Storm operations. This was Strategic Sealift of historic proportions, encompassing nearly 250 ships, delivering more than 18 billion pounds of equipment and fuel by the end of January. More than 95% of all supplies were sent by sea, with the average voyage about 8,700 miles, the farthest in history.
May I have your attention? You're going to go through the mobilization process.
The total force concept proved highly successful, as Naval and Marine Corps reservists provided critical skills wherever and whenever needed. By mid-February, the Navy and Marine Corps had mobilized more than 45,000 reservists for up to 1 year. In medicine, reservists helped man the hospital ships Mercy and Comfort. 3 Navy field hospitals were deployed and staffed with the help of reserve Seabees and medical personnel. The Seabees also worked around the clock to construct roads, buildings, and runways. Regulars and reservists worked closely to provide constant surveillance of key ports, harbors, and waterways. The Navy also provided critical support in the areas of combat search and rescue, cargo handling, naval control of shipping, intelligence, public affairs, and logistical support. By the end of the first month of the war, joint service and combined operations completely dominated Iraq in the air and at sea, setting the stage for ground operations.
The liberation of Kuwait has now entered a final phase, to eject the Iraqi army from Kuwait.
Flying sea-based combat support missions for the first time, Marine AV-8B Harriers joined Navy A-6 Intruders and FA-18s as they pounded frontline positions. Marines and other ground forces quickly breached Iraqi defensive lines and easily outflanked the Republican Guard.
Can't say enough about the two Marine divisions. If I use words like brilliant, it would really be an under-description of the absolutely superb job that they did in breaching the so-called impenetrable barrier.
After 38 days of precision bombing, U.S. and Allied ground forces swept through Iraq in less than 100 hours, obliterating what was once the world's fourth largest army.
Well, they just collapsed. They didn't have the will to fight.
Marines were cheered by men, women, and children as they entered Kuwait City, freeing it from the horrors of Iraqi occupation.
Well, we've had a tremendous success, and I couldn't be happier or more proud of the Marines and the soldiers that fought with us.
With the Iraqi war machine now in ruins, President Bush ordered a ceasefire.
And as president, I can report to the nation, aggression is defeated, the war is over.
Victory didn't come without sacrifice. U.S. losses included 126 killed in action and an additional 82 non-combat related casualties. U.S. fixed-wing and helicopter losses numbered 60, with nearly half resulting from non-combat mishaps.
This victory belongs to the finest fighting force this nation has ever known in its history.
Our prisoners of war arrived home to the cheers and hugs of family and friends. The senior prisoner of war, Air Force Colonel David Eberly, praised the conduct of all the POWs.
The conduct during captivity of the ladies and gentlemen beside me has been without question. Their sense of honor and duty to country has been beyond reproach.
Your country is opening its arms to greet you. In this rare moment in the life of our nation, let me speak for all Americans and thank you and all your fellow soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines for a job well done.
We're coming home now, proud, confident, heads high.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proud